All right. Welcome back to Homestead. It's been a fat minute. Has it? I think it's only been like a week. Um, I think I've been doing these on my days off. I work, what is it? Thursday to Monday. So I have Tuesdays and Wednesdays off. Today is Wednesday. It is Wednesday, my dudes. Oh. Can you tell I'm medicated? Today's subject, not slavery. Well, let's get in here first. We're not going to be building today because the subject for today is something that I have no idea about. So I think we're going to be mining. But here's the thing. Oh my god, where's my mouse? Okay, where'd it go? There we go. Oh, never mind. I forgot we were fucking digging out this entire thing. Okay, no, we might just be finishing digging out this entire. I forgot we were doing this. You see how our fucking diamond pickaxe is already fucked up? Maybe we should. Maybe we should just go mining and then try and find. Because how much more shit do we have in here? Oh, it tells us. Nothing. Nothing. We have 12 diamonds left, and then those diamond shards that I still don't 100% know what to do with. So I think I found some caves in my explorations yonder. On the way getting here, because I remember, bro. Look at how it's coming along, bro. Look at how sick it is. I love the color contrast between the rest of the biome. It's like the rest of the biome's bright green, and then you have what is it, oak on that side, like the bright trees, and then you have spruce all the way over there, and then you have some pines that are over there too, and then it's like boom, dark, gritty, abandoned type shit. Look, the moss, this looks sick. Yeah, and then our fucking hippity hoppity TARDIS right here. We will do more with this. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So let's see. Oh, well, I was gonna dump all this stuff in my inventory. That's what I was gonna do. Oh god. Oh, there's nothing in my. What the? Well, now I gotta restart this. Okay, but look, these are the stuff that I have in the. This is a dark forest. This was. What is it? Wait, come back. This was potentially something. Oh my god. How the fuck do I. Oh my god. This is potentially something. I don't know what this is. But it is definitely something that is here. And then here, there's a. This is a dark forest. I think this was to get wood. Bro, zoom in. Why? And this was just to get wood. And then this is a forgotten forest. I could have swore some of these were caves. Well, no, look at the background. It's the forest for the thing. And this one, it's just black. Well, we'll start with that one. That one just might be a dark oak forest. This one is in the White Cliffs. We have absolutely zero reason to be in the White Cliffs. So that one might be the cave. This is where we're going to be watching the video. Ignore Abby Plaza. This was the first Instagram. This was the first short that came on. But yes. Anyways, so today's subject is. Oh my goodness. I can't even. What is it? Start. The just war theory or pacifism. I've never learned about either of these before, so this is going to be interesting. So we're going to go, oh my goodness, tap. Why is it doing that? It has to be over 5 minutes, and this video is 4 minutes and 55 seconds. Knowing how anal this teacher is, he's probably not going to allow that. At least in his syllabus, he comes out anal. I don't take his. I'm not like in person. What? Oh, oops. It's just war. No, just war. Theory. In theory. I could steal more from you in theory. Oh, just war as in, just as in justified. Oh, through my sticks. Fuck. That makes more sense than what I was thinking in my head. Here, but first, let's find a thingy. So where are my businesses? Emeralds. I have so many emeralds for like no reason. What is this? Drink to return to your spawn point or world spawn. Can be used to ignite nether portals. Use empty bottle on a filled respawn anchor. What is a respawn anchor? This is just wood. Let me just put the rest of my wood in here, I guess. Bam, bam, bam. Oh, the biomes we've got, bro. And I think I still have other types of wood. It seems like what we got on torches. I guess not if I don't have any fucking... what is magnetite? What do these things do? What am I playing? Wait, hold on. So we have a diamond pick, but obviously that's not gonna be... Maybe we can make like one more. Even though I don't really want to. I have a fuck ton of iron though. Oh, I also have a fuck ton of torches in here. Let's go. I also have a fuck ton of pickaxes in here. Okay, wait. I don't really need you. I do need you. I do need you. And then I'm gonna need you. And you. And you. And possibly even you. So, I need food. Where am I gonna get food? Oh, there's even more torches in here. Look at that. There's doors too. I think that's fine. Oh, no. I need more armor because this is some bullshit that I have on right now. I'm just gonna dump this shit in the ocean like I dump everything else. Dude, I fucking barely slept, bro. I slept at like fucking 3, almost 4 in the morning. Which is annoying because I was feeling sleepy before that, but I just didn't go to sleep. Oh, go away. Yeah, this was fucked. I didn't know there was like a whole idea of justified wars. I feel like... I don't know, bro. It's so difficult. Because you watch fucking shit where it's like, no, we don't have to hurt people. But then it's like, well, we don't have to hurt people. But people keep hurting people. Even Superman hurts people. Like, bro. Homestead. Have I completed any more, like, quests? Quest book. Obsidian Shard? Okay, so no. Armor. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, 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 bam. Then bam, 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 bam. Look at that. And then we can just fucking bam, 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 bam. And all of a sudden, I feel safe. Okay, so I don't know what I'm supposed to do about food. I don't think I'd go through all that fucking bread that fast. But anyways, let's pause for a hippity hop second, and then let's look at open. We're gonna look at this one. Negative 50, 10, 68. Hold on, let's just do this. Slash TP negative 50, 10. 68 negative 2460. Why did I keep this? Oh, I vaguely remember. Oh, I can't. I don't know why the fuck I kept this. Every time I run this, my laptop gets super hot. This might have been when I was looking for the TARDIS route. White chalk? Oh, there's also a dark oak forest here. Is that what it was possibly trying to preserve? I would like to find a cave. That would be very wonderful. But here, while I look, we're gonna look at... This is just war. Well, here we go. Pacifism versus... Wait, just war theory. We're gonna go just war theory versus pacifism. Even though I feel like they're pretty self-explanatory. Would Jesus support drone strikes? Let's do this one. This one's called The Philosophy of War, Pacifism versus ... which I assume is just war theory. This is by The Paradoxical Plate. And we're going to listen to this.
Human phenomenon has generated a
Sounds like AI.
profound and diverse philosophical discourse. This discourse oscillates between two principal schools of...
This is fucking... Is it AI, bro? It's from a year ago, so probably... Okay, let's find another one. Would Jesus support drone strikes is so funny.
The Bush administration was making its...
Okay. We tackled just war theory. This is just war theory. Challenges to just war theory. Okay. This is an entire video on just war theory. This is comparing it's taking a look at just war theory, as the description says, through the lens of one of the most contentious conflicts in the past few decades, the Iraq War, which is obviously, this is from December 25th, 2004. Obviously, we have a different perspective on the Iraqi War since every conspiracy ever made is turning out to be true. So let's hope the moon landing was real at least. God. This is by Crash Course. What are the rules of war? Just war theory. All right.
When the United States invaded Iraq in March 2003, I was an 8th grader, more concerned with starring in my middle school musical than with foreign relations. But there was something that stood out to me about that time. In the year leading up to the invasion, President George W. Bush and members of his administration seemed to be making a case to the American public and Congress that the U.S. should go to war against Iraq. Flash forward 20 plus years, and I could see that Bush and his team were at least outwardly engaging with something called just war theory, an ethical framework used to decide when it's acceptable to go to war and how that war should be fought. So, what is just war theory? And how do we decide if a war is ever just? I'm Ellie Anderson, and this is Crash Course Political Theory. The Bush administration was making its arguments for war in the early 2000s, but it turns out that theories around the ethics of war go back millennia. For example, the 13th century Italian philosopher Thomas Aquinas really set the stage for just war theory as we know it. I learned that there are two main categories, and of course they're in Latin. Jus ad bellum asks, what should a nation consider before going to war? And jus in bello asks, how can a nation make sure the war they're already fighting stays just? Jus ad bellum, or the right to wage war, takes 6 criteria into consideration when deciding whether going to war is justified. And it can't meet just 1 or 2. All 6 need to be met, which, as you can imagine, is pretty difficult to do. Okay, so criterion 1. Does a nation have a good moral reason to go to war, also known as just cause?
All right, already. We're at a contentious, I don't even know if that's the word, but we're at a, well, let me look on the Yeah, we're at a contentious point. This is already what is just? What is just cause? Because to Hitler, white supremacy was a just cause, and anti-Semitism was a just cause. So already, what is a just cause? Right? All right.
For example, a widely accepted reason to wage war is self-defense. And this is one of the levers
Valid.
the Bush administration pulled to make their case. In his 2002 State of the Union address, 4 months after...
Correct. And this is what they did. And then this is, again, another contentious... This entire thing, I love this. As an ethics class, this is the first topic. Sorry, I don't know how the fuck it took me that long to get to that word. This is the first topic that I feel is actually going to be challenging thought and morality from the entire list of stuff we've gotten this year. And that's because it's a very difficult question, and I don't even know if there's a right or wrong answer, which is how ethics should be. Like, obviously there's never going to be a right answer when it comes to ethics. Anyways. In terms of self-defense, oh my god, the lag. Like, there's already another argument you can make, and it's something that the Bush administration did, right? Where they said, oh, I think it was Iraq. I could be wrong. They could be proving me wrong right now in like 2 seconds, and I'm getting this inspiration from what's his face, Danky Janky, that guy. Dude, he's literally my age, which is crazy. And I was watching his video on the Only Jace like fucking drama from like a while ago, from like a week ago, and it was like, oh, he's like reading up on this shit. Like, 1100 blocks. As he's going and forming opinions as he's going, which is a... Oh, what is that? I'm just looking for a cave, bro. Anyways, so they could be, like, about to prove me wrong. But I think it was the Iraq War where the entire argument for self-defense was completely disingenuous. I believe it's now the argument... No, I don't think that's right. But that was the argument that they used, and which turned out to be false. So the self-defense argument can easily be used as a way to incite conflict. And as long as you can convince people that there is a cause for self-defense, then you're pretty much already widely justified to start a war. Oh my god, I don't have food, I don't have food, I don't have food, I don't have food. What the fuck is that? A cave. Is it a cave? Is it a real cave? Oh, they're coming after me because I'm brown. Oh, it's not a cave! Ugh. Go away, go away, go away. But yeah, it turned out later, because what was the Bush administration saying? That Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and then it turned out that they didn't. Which is how they convinced the country to go to agree to the war, and then it just later turned out that they actually wanted Iraq, I believe, for oil. I think that's what it was. Which is now why we're so fucked with Iran. Because now we don't have access to their oil, I believe. I don't know. I'm not, like, just getting into this. And I only got into it because now, like, Nazi part 2. So, but then it's like, it's probably because I didn't really care that I ended up being one of the people that allowed it to happen. Which is rough. Which is rough. Gotta make your peace with some stuff like that type shit. I can't sprint anymore. Oh god. Well, I have like raw shit. Oh, it's gonna give me hunger. Oh. Anyways, yeah, self-defense already again contentious because again, what does self-defense mean? All of these are gonna be like that. I guarantee you. They're all going to be like that. But, again, I feel like they're so contentious that's why there's 6 criteria. It's going to be difficult for you to convince a country of all 6, and therefore those being the only justified ways for you to start a war. So fucked. Anyways, let's be fucked while listening to this.
After the September 11th terrorist attacks, President Bush warned Americans about Iraqi President Saddam Hussein's hostility toward the U.S. And a few months later, Vice President Dick Cheney said in a speech, quote, "There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
See, I was right.
There is no doubt he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies, and against us." But what are the limits of self-defense?
Exactly.
Can you take action if you think someone is about to attack you? Or do you have to wait for them to do it first? Turns out with just war theory, the answer falls somewhere in between. Folks often distinguish between preemptive action, where there's evidence that the enemy is about to attack, and preventive action, where the enemy might attack.
This is why America entered the Second World War. I think it was the Second World War. It was one of the World Wars. The reason I want to say it's the... No. It was a Second World War. It was a Second World War where they intercepted the Germans' message to Mexico saying, "Yo, you guys are right under the United States. It would be super cool if you guys would just invade them." And I think the United States intercepted that message. Oh, no. Maybe it was World War One, because the reason they joined World War II was because of Pearl Harbor. Another fucking pillager outpost. Oh, I'm cooked. We're so cooked. Anyways, maybe I could be wrong about this entirely, but I'm sure there was a intercepted message that was going to Mexico where whatever countries were against the Allied powers were like, yo, Mexico, you guys are right under the United States. You guys should just attack them. Like, for us. Please. And then they intercepted it. And then they were like, you know what, bro? We're going to go over there and kick your fucking ass. So that would fall under both of these, preemptive and preventive. Because they were aware that the enemy was about... Well, actually, you know what? That the enemy might attack. Because so it would fall under preventive.
The latter, as you might imagine, is much harder to justify. Bush officials argued that because Hussein failed to abide by UN weapons resolutions, we couldn't trust him, even though we had no definitive proof that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. So this approach would likely be considered preventive rather than preemptive. Okay, criterion 2. Let's say a nation does have just cause. It also needs to have the right intention for going to war. Basically, the cause is the thing that started it all, and the intention is the goal. So we might ask, is this war ultimately trying to achieve something good? Beyond protecting Americans from the possibility of future attack, the Bush administration asserted that their intention was to depose Saddam Hussein and bring democracy to Iraq. And there's no question that Hussein was a brutal dictator. In one instance during his nearly 30-year rule, he unleashed poison gas on a Kurdish village that killed 5,000 people he suspected of disloyalty. But many Americans were and are suspicious of the
You mean like they're doing right now?
Bush administration's intentions. And even if the war was justified for humanitarian reasons, it's complicated. Kofi Annan, the UN Secretary General at the time, said that the invasion of Iraq violated the UN Charter, and millions of people protested across the globe, forming the largest peace demonstration since the Vietnam War. An intention to defend human rights sounds noble, but that doesn't necessarily mean it passes the just war test. Next is criterion 3. Only a nation can declare a war, not an individual. Finally, an easy one. In the case of the US invading Iraq, we can check this box. Except, what constitutes a nation? Does it have to be an internationally recognized state? Sometimes the legitimacy of the nation is precisely what's in dispute, like in the Israel-Gaza war that began in 2023. How do we determine who's a legitimate authority? And what happens if an illegitimate authority attacks? Criterion 4 looks at the likelihood of success. Traditional just war theory says that a nation should only go to war if they have a reasonable chance of success. Otherwise, it's just a waste of human life and resources.
France.
This might seem unfair on the surface. I mean, what about the underdogs? But it makes sense when you think about the high costs of war, some of which can continue long after the war is over. But to consider the likelihood of success means defining what success looks like. Is it deposing Saddam Hussein?
This is what's so annoying but interesting at the same time when it comes to questions like this, is that it all boils down to difference of opinion, because it's like, well, what does this mean? Well, what does that mean? What do you think this means? And then they're like, I don't know. What do you think this means? And then it's like, bro, it's like a whole fucking thing. And then yeah, anyways.
Destroying weapons that might be turned on the US? Setting up a democratic government? Mission accomplished isn't always a straightforward idea. And all of this brings us to criterion 5. Would going to war do more good than harm? This is called proportionality.
It seems like they're saying there's 6 different things, but in reality it's like 3, because there's so many of these that are just like, what is good? It's like, are you good? Are you good? Are you good? Is this good? Is this good? I mean, is this good or is it bad? Like, is it good? And then the only other 2 have been like, only a nation can determine whether to start a war, not a single person. And then what was the other one? Oh, if it's like probable that they're gonna win. Whoa. Oh, I'm so tired. Oh, I was doing one of these and I'm fucking I haven't slept. But again, now this is just is it good? Are you good? Are you fine? Like, is this a good thing? Like, bro, what does that mean?
And it asks us to imagine two possible futures, one with the war and one without it.
All right.
Just war theory says that a nation should only go to war if the peace that would be achieved is greater than if the war had never started.
I take it
At
back.
this point, I'm feeling like justifying a war requires a magically foolproof crystal ball. Even if we can answer some or all of these questions, we can't predict the future. At least I can't. But before I throw in the towel, there's one last criterion to contend with. Is war the last resort? Just war theory says that a nation should only go to war after it has tried every other means possible to get what it wants. Is there a diplomatic option? Can its goal be achieved non-violently? And these questions just beget more questions, like how do you know what alternatives are available? Or who decides when they've been fully exhausted? Fully exhausted.
Right. Wow.
On March 17th, 2003, President Bush issued a public ultimatum.
Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict, commenced at a time of our choosing.
Hussein did not comply. And on March 20th, the Iraq War officially began.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
Which takes us to the next portion of just war theory. The ethical criteria for after you've started fighting a war, called jus in bello, or justice in war. First, a warring nation can only aim at legitimate targets. Enemy combatants are fair game, but civilians should be spared. This falls under the doctrine of double effect, which says that serious harm...
Civilians should be spared. Again, what is civilians? Do you remember the Vietnam War? Dude, I remember learning about the Vietnam War. I think it was in college. I can't remember if it was a few years ago or if it was in high school. It was in high school. It was in junior year because I think it was over quarantine. Anyways, there's a village where it's not funny, but again, I guess the only way I can process shit like this. It's like there was a whole village full of just people, women, children, elderly, men, and they were told this entire village is Viet Cong. And they were just like, all right. And just mowed down the entire fucking village. And it was crazy because obviously they're civilians to us. And then it's like, again, there's like the whole conversation of like, bro, did you really think they were Viet Cong or did you just want to fucking kill a bunch of Vietnamese people? Anyways, but like that question stands, and then they're doing an interview with these soldiers after the war is over, and then a lot of them were just like, we were just following orders, and you can kind of see like the regret in their eyes. Doesn't excuse what they did because that shit was fucking horrific. And then you see those soldiers with nothing behind their eyes going, no, everybody in that village was Viet Cong. We were following orders and terminating the enemy. And it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. So again, just like every other thing in this fucking thing, it's like, well, what does that mean? But then obviously we kind of know what a civilian means, so it's probably not a great example, and they're just lying and justifying it like, oh, kind of like they're doing right now. They labeled Renee Good as a domestic terrorist. They labeled I'm so sorry, Andy, I forgot your last name. I think that was his name, Andy. The nurse who was shot, they labeled him a domestic terrorist. Now they're labeling anybody who goes against the Trump administration a domestic terrorist. No longer defining normal people as civilians. Not that we're in a war yet, but Yeah. Obviously, to everybody in the DHS and in the White House, all of this is justified, right? So it's like, now what do civilians even mean?
Harm can be caused only if it's a side effect of your attempt to do good. Like, if a bomber targets military facilities and doesn't intend to kill civilians, even if they know that's likely to happen, that's considered morally acceptable. Whereas targeting civilians as a means of invoking terror isn't. Sadly, in reality, civilians die in the crossfire of war all the time. At least 200,000 Iraqi civilians were killed during the 8-year conflict. Second, the damage from war to people, infrastructure, and the environment must be proportionate to the ends achieved,
water?
which is, again, very difficult, very morally ambiguous math. And third, is each action necessary?
Wait, I didn't get that last one.
Everything you whereas targeting civilians as a means of invoking terror isn't. Sadly, in reality, civilians die in the crossfire of war all the time. At least 200,000 Iraqi civilians were killed during the 8-year conflict. Second, the damage from war to people, infrastructure, and the environment must be proportionate to the ends achieved, which is, again, very difficult, very morally ambiguous math.
Right.
And third, is each action necessary?
Again.
Everything you do during the war must be necessary to pass the just war test, which is a tall order, and one that's particularly challenged by the US's treatment of political prisoners at the Abu Ghraib prison in Baghdad. So, was the Iraq War justified? Many people would say no. This survey from the Pew Research Center found that 62% of Americans believed the war wasn't worth fighting. And scholars such as Christian Enemark and Christopher Michelson, who've analyzed the war across each of the just war criteria, came to similar conclusions. But some still argue that the Iraq War was justified, including former Vice President Dick Cheney. Speaking at Cornell University in 2018, Cheney said, quote, "I think the world is a better place without Saddam in it. I think the president had all the justification he needed." In war, as in life, hindsight is 2020. I wasn't in any war room as these decisions were made, so I can't speak to how philosophical the conversations got. But the standards of just war theory are high, and meeting all the criteria isn't easy, which makes sense given how much is at stake. As we've seen, there are challenges and complications to all of the just war criteria. And these hard questions only get harder when you consider the wide variety of cultures at play. Warring nations might have radically different moral perspectives on things, like how prisoners should be treated or what humane rules of engagement look like. And then there's technology, which adds another layer. Drones let combatants target people as easily as playing a video game. And lethal autonomous weapon systems use AI to target and destroy enemy fighters. All of these advances in technology complicate the questions of just war theory even further. It doesn't surprise me that some people push back against the whole premise altogether. For example, feminist scholar Lucinda Peach points out that women have historically been excluded from discussions about war, which disregards the life-altering impacts of war for countless women and children around the world. Like any idea that's been around for millennia, just war theory is still evolving. Recently, philosophers have introduced jus post bellum, justice after war, which asks, what's the right thing to do when a war is over? If the point of a just war is to achieve peace, then combatants should be held accountable afterwards for their actions during war. And rules of peace should be established too. So here's where I've landed. It's really hard to determine if war is ever truly just, and that makes sense. These are questions with numerous answers, and holes can be poked in every one of them. Just war theory is more than a simple checklist. It's a lens that we can use to interrogate our leaders' decisions and to ask questions about history, today, and what's to come. Next time, we'll talk about what makes a good leader, and if that includes being a good person. See you then. Thanks for watching this episode of Crash Course Political Theory, which was filmed at the Bastille Studio and was made with the help of all these nice people. If you want to help keep Crash Course free for everyone forever, You can join our community on Patreon.
So that was just war theory. Completely ambiguous. I came out with a different opinion than I went in with. I was like, maybe every now and again. But then, you think about the difference between executing someone publicly, one person who committed an atrocity, and then the difference between that and then the difference between a war. I kind of ignored the word war in that. And then you kind of realize, yeah, it's war. So many people die unnecessarily in wars. I was just doom scrolling on Instagram Reels, and it's like, do you develop I think utilitarian is like the term, like one, like sacrifice for the sake of everyone, like Ari Shafir. I happened to stumble upon like a fucking talk show that he was on from fucking forever ago. The quality gave forever ago. And well, and he was like, anarchy is the only way. He was like, if this drops me in water, I swear to... Why is there so much fucking water? There is a ridiculous fucking amount of water. What is this, Point fucking Nemo? There. Jesus fucking Christ. Give me some fucking land. For God's sakes. Chalk cliffs, whatever. Give me fucking anything. Jesus. So much fucking... Give me some of this bamboo. Yeah, now it's getting fucking dark. Whatever. Watch, I'm not even gonna find a fucking cave. This is wild. This mod this mod pack like has to support caves and cliffs. Oh, I'm not going anywhere near the fucking water, bro. Get me out of this water. It's a bamboo log. I'm gonna leave it there because fuck you guys. I understand the lag here. There's so much shit to load in. Oh, it's gonna get so much laggier when the mobs spawn in. Okay, next time let's do 11. I already forgot what I was fucking talking about. Oh, I was talking about Ari Shafir's fucking talk show where he goes like, oh, nothing matters. He's like, anarchy's the only way. And then he was like, think about it. Every single change that's happened in the world, good or bad, has all happened due to violence. And then he was like, violence is the only way. And then it sounds like one of those truths where it's just like, yeah, maybe. And then it's like you reach a point where you're just like, think about it. But then you're also reaching a point where, for example, Zohran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York, isn't hurting anybody. and he's just fixing New York like it's fucking nothing. And but then again, you think about how many Mamdanis are really in the world. It's like all the Mamdanis in the world don't want to be in positions of power. All like the high intelligent people, nobody wants to be in power because they like no, I guess. I don't really have an explanation for that, to be honest. I thought it kind of got away from me. But the other point still stands. How many Mamdanis realistically, like this is the first good, genuinely good politician we've seen in decades. So it's like, bro. You see how I'm still not finding any caves? This is ridiculous. Is this a cave? Whoa, whoa, whoa there, Bucky boy. So it's like, is there a time where, like, war is justified? Like, I don't know. Maybe. Because I agree, the world is better without Saddam Hussein. Ooh, wow, 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 wow. But was the death of Saddam Hussein worth 200,000 casualties? Like, and some people would say yes. Some people would say, what's 200,000 to 8 billion or something like that? And then it's like, that's not necessarily wrong, but I don't even know how many people live in Iran. Like, what's like, let's say 10 million people live in Iran, and then people are like, oh, what's 200,000 to 10 million? And then a part of you could be like, yeah, bro, maybe it's just casual. Maybe it's just should be chalked up to casualties. See, there's fucking nothing here. Oh wait. Oh god. But yeah. Okay, well that was just war theory. Everything in that was so ambiguous. Because like everything at the end of the day boils down to like, oh, what do you think? Is this good? Is this? And then it just gives so many people. How do I get to that screen? Exit. Oh, there it is. Anyways, next is pacifism. Let's find something on pacifism. Oh my fucking god, bro. Ugh, pacifism should be banned. Whoa, wow. I think at the end of the day, I don't know, man. It's so difficult, but to just let innocent people die, and maybe because you're so disconnected from it, or maybe, I don't know, if you adopt the mentality of you yourself being a casualty or sacrifice. This is another video by Crash Course called Nonviolence and Peace. It's from 10 years ago. Jesus Christ. Where does the time go? Anyways. Let's put it on.
Hi, I'm John Green. This is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to talk about something we haven't discussed much here at Crash Course: peace. Peaceful, non-violent protest.
Mr. Green, finally an episode where no one gets killed.
Some people are going to get killed, me, from the past. Sadly, peaceful, non-violent protest is often just peaceful on the one side. So we've talked a lot about war this year on Crash Course, how it shaped civilizations and nation states, and it's easy to assume that humans are kind of naturally violent and prone to fighting. And in recent human history, especially during the 20th century, we got scarily good at waging war, right? There were, of course, the 2 world wars, but there were also many other very destructive smaller wars, and we can't forget that there were also genocides. But one of the most remarkable and often unnoticed aspects of the 20th century is the incredible number of peace, non-violence, and anti-war movements. Like we know about Gandhi, but what makes the 20th century unique in history is that Gandhi wasn't unique. There was actually a surprisingly large number of peace and non-violence movements that were occurring all around the world. So in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the non-violent heavy hitters like Martin Luther King and Gandhi. I guess I should say the heavy non-hitters, because, you know, they were non-violent. But they were by no means the only ones.
Oh, that was loud, sorry.
So by 1900, Europeans pretty much dominated the world. Even though there had been relative peace in Europe since 1871, Europeans, using new weapons, had unleashed an incredible amount of violence everywhere else on the planet. They'd colonized most of Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. Americans had also expanded across the continental United States and were making eyes at the Caribbean and Asia. And I want to be clear that this conquest and colonization was consistently violent, but some people were beginning to question the very idea of violence itself. Like in his 1894 book, The Kingdom of God is Within You, Leo Tolstoy, who knew a little bit about war and peace, explored how Jesus' message to, quote, turn the other cheek, was the basis for a life of nonviolence. He argued that governments and individuals needed to give up violence if they believed themselves to be true Christians. And Tolstoy also saw nonviolence as a solution to ending colonialism.
This is, nonviolence ending colonialism. Nonviolence stopping people from invading you. How does that stop somebody from invading you? Stop somebody from invading you? It just seems like putting your ass up for the rapist.
In 1908, Tolstoy wrote a letter to a Hindu, to Mohandas Gandhi, and in the letter, he explained that Indians needed to confront British imperialism with love and nonviolence. Gandhi not only read that letter, he also published it in his South African newspaper Indian Opinion in 1909, and Tolstoy's ideas and his correspondence with Gandhi marked the beginning of an informal dialogue between advocates of nonviolence from around the world that spanned the 20th century. And Tolstoy wasn't the only influence on Mohandas K. Gandhi. He'd grown up in the Gujarat region of India, where there's a sizable Jain community. And through the Jain monks, Gandhi was exposed to the idea of ahimsa, non-violence or non-injury to life. He also read widely, including Western writers like John Ruskin and Henry David Thoreau. So after his return to India from South Africa in 1915, Gandhi began to distill his thinking related to nonviolence into a more explicit philosophy. In his 1929 autobiography, The Story of My Experiments with Truth, Gandhi wrote about how his belief in ahimsa could be the basis for Indians' resistance to British rule. So for Gandhi, nonviolence was both a way of life and a tool for gaining Indian self-rule. He saw Western civilization as violent and exploitative. That's ridiculous. I know the Eurocentrists are going to get mad at me for saying that, but it is true. It's a smidge violent and exploitative at times. That said, well done with like market-based innovation and the Mona Lisa and etc. Okay, let's move on. Gandhi believed that Indians could reject that lifestyle and replace it with a nonviolent one. And Gandhi also believed that Indians could bring about an end to British rule through a combination of ahimsa and satyagraha, a word often translated as adherence to truth. All right, let's go to the thought bubble. These interconnected ideas of ahimsa and satyagraha are best seen in the Salt March of 1930. So since the mid-19th century, the British had placed taxes on salt, and since salt, in addition to making food more delicious, is necessary to live, Gandhi saw these laws as a perfect example of how British despotism affected all Indians. Gandhi announced that he and a small group planned to march from his home in Ahmedabad to the coast in order to harvest salt. The march took almost 2 months and quickly gathered media attention from around the world, and the British Raj in India was forced to choose between arresting Gandhi for breaking a British law or else allowing him to break the law because he was harvesting salt illegally. Millions of Indians were inspired by Gandhi's challenge to British rule and began their own protests against the salt law. As civil disobedience spread across India, the British began to arrest people, and the international media focused even more on the protests, and popular opinion began to see British rule as unjust. By refusing to meet violent British rule with violence of his own and highlighting the injustice of British rule, Gandhi was able to use nonviolence as an effective tool in undermining the colonial regime. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So, as previously noted, Gandhi's use of nonviolence is very well known, but it wasn't unique. Throughout the early 20th century, nationalist movements in colonies throughout Africa and Asia also adopted nonviolence. Like, one of the first nationalist leaders to advocate for nonviolent resistance to imperialism was Phan Chu Trinh. Just as the Vietnamese independence movement was developing in the first decade of the 1900s, Phan began to question the violent methods advocated by other nationalists. Like, he spoke out against the violent uprisings that were occurring in many parts of Vietnam. He also resisted requesting help from Japan in the Vietnamese independence struggle because of Japan's militarism. In 1919, Egyptians protested against British rule by going on strike and boycotting British goods and organizing demonstrations across the country. Those protests went on for months, and eventually, in 1922, the British granted independence to Egypt, although some key areas, including the Suez Canal, did remain under British control. And even as nonviolence became a tactic associated with anti-imperial movements in Africa and Asia, it was also becoming entrenched in the peace movement that developed in response to World War I. When war broke out in the fall of 1914, there were lots of protests. In the United States, which had yet to enter the war, a number of young activists met to discuss how to stop it and how to prevent the United States from entering it. This group included A.J. Musty and Kirby Page and Dorothy Day, all of whom would go on to become important figures in the peace movement in the United States. They also helped found the Fellowship of Reconciliation, or FOR, which advocated on behalf of conscientious objectors and encouraged nonviolent alternatives to conflict. And then, after the war ended, many of these American peace activists began to expand their horizons, and they saw connections between nonviolence in anti-war movements and nonviolence in the anti-imperial struggle. There was, for instance, Richard Gregg, a young activist who'd been involved in the anti-war movement in the United States, who traveled to India in 1925. He spent 4 years in India studying with Gandhi, including 7 months living at Gandhi's ashram in Gujarat. And then when he returned to the U.S., Gregg wrote the very influential book, The Power of Nonviolence, in which he described how nonviolence would remake the world. I mentioned this to get across the idea that this was truly an international movement that involved cultural exchange that went both west to east and east to west. And this idea of nonviolent resistance was also very compelling to artists. During the Spanish Civil War, the nationalist forces of General Franco heavily bombed the Basque village of Guernica, and after reading about the destruction of the village, the Spanish artist Pablo Picasso, who was working on a commissioned mural for the Spanish Republic, abandoned the mural and began painting Guernica to draw attention to the horrors that war inflicts upon innocent civilians. The painting became one of the most famous of the 20th century, and it remains a powerful anti-war symbol. There were even nonviolent protests against the Nazis. Like in 1943, the German Gestapo arrested about 1,800 Jewish men who were married to non-Jewish women, and as those men were being held in an office building, their wives gathered together on the street. Armed German Gestapo agents attempted to disperse them with threats of firing into the crowd, and a standoff between the unarmed women and the armed Gestapo went on for a week. Instead of firing on the women, Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi Party director in Berlin, ultimately decided to back down, and he released the men. The so-called Rosenstrasse protest was the only successful public protest against Nazi policies Nazis in Germany, but it wasn't the only protest. And then we have the civil rights movement in the United States, which brought together many of the different strains of nonviolent resistance in the 20th century. Like during World War II, civil rights pioneer Bayard Rustin met A.J. Muste and other members of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, and they spent much of the war protesting racial discrimination in the armed forces. But at the same time, Rustin was also becoming increasingly aware of the injustice of British colonialism in India and Africa, and began to protest that as well. And we see this global cross-fertilization of nonviolent ideas again in 1948, when Rustin traveled to India, where he met with many of Gandhi's associates. Gandhi had been killed in January of that year, and learned about the role of nonviolent protest against the British. And in the following decade, Rustin would teach Martin Luther King Jr. about Gandhi's tactics so he could use them in protesting against racial segregation in the United States. King himself traveled to India in 1959 to learn more about nonviolence, and before leaving, he explained that he was, quote, more convinced than ever before that the method of nonviolent resistance is the most potent weapon available to oppressed people in their struggle for justice and human dignity. And the principles of nonviolence would come to shape the strategies used for the remainder of the civil rights movement. Nonviolent resistance was also an important protest tactic during the Cold War. Alexander Dubček, the Czech Communist Party's first secretary, began a series of reforms to communist rule in Czechoslovakia in January 1968 that would become known as the Prague Spring. And the Soviet Union was like, no, we don't like democratic reforms or spring. So they sent in troops to destabilize Dubček's government. And in response to that invasion, civilians quickly took to the streets in support of Dubček and to resist the invasion. Most people resisted through a variety of nonviolent means, including deliberately giving wrong directions to Soviet tanks, forming human blockades across bridges, and distributing protest materials. Secret radio stations were set up to broadcast calls for nonviolent resistance across the country, and the protests continued on for the rest of 1968. In January of 1969, 2 Czech students burned themselves to death in a Prague square to protest the Soviet occupation, and as the tensions between protesters and the Soviets escalated, the Soviets began a violent crackdown. By the summer of 1969, they'd brought the demonstrations to an end. Historians took note of all of this stuff, like historian Gene Sharp published his multi-volume Politics of Nonviolent Action, which was reportedly read by a lot of the original protesters in the Arab Spring of 2011, which reminds us that nonviolent resistance movements advocating for, and in some cases achieving, political change are not just part of history, they're also part of the world in which we live today. Ideas about nonviolence that began with Leo Tolstoy at the beginning of the 20th century are still very much with us. And I think it's good to remind ourselves of 2 things. First, that Tolstoy's most famous book is called War and Peace. And secondly, that the 20th century, while it featured intensely destructive wars, was by many measures the least violent century ever. Wars are traumatic, and they have relatively straightforward narratives that allow us to focus on human dramas, and all of that stuff is appealing to historians. But really, the nonviolent struggles against oppression in the 20th century have been...
This is not necessarily what I'm looking for. Although, here, let's go back and see if that reel is there. Okay, let's listen to Pacifism should be banned.
Pacifism is objectively worse than fascism. It is the most violent ideology someone can possess. You see, ideologies are lenses through which we view the world. They're not just things you believe in abstraction. They have very real mental, social, and spiritual effects upon you. Now, you see, pacifism is far more ideological than it is workable, and unworkable ideologies fail. When an ideological lens fails the person that holds it, that makes that person wrong, and that's bad. In the wild, when an animal is wrong, when an animal is incorrect, that animal dies. Human beings are hardwired to never, ever, ever be wrong. It is then a cold-blooded fact that we will become antagonistic towards that which makes us wrong. It is therefore predetermined that pacifists will become cynical towards the very concept of peace itself, and therefore wage perpetual war. Pacifists are dangerous and should be arrested. Pacifism is objectively...
That's an interesting perspective. Here, let's read some of these comments. Bro is literally yapping PS. Don't let bro cook. Fascism is idolizing terrible nationalism. Pacifism is idealizing peace. Never let bro speak again. Pacifism fails to achieve its goals because it relies on the belief that non-violence can effectively counter aggression, which it cannot. The moment violence is used, the ideology dies. Not only does the ideology die, it also assumes that everybody will be a pacifist. It assumes that there's a pacifist in all of us. there's a hero in all of us. And it's like, that's just simply not true. Pacifism is not objective. There's, not everybody is capable of being a pacifist. And again, it's like he said, because I guess literally the only thing to pacifism is that you prioritize peace over war. Like peace at all costs, non-violence under any... I guess the only... That's just it. Non-violence under any circumstance. I'm gonna take a picture of this because I don't want to lose this. And then now we actually have something to go back to. Jesus. I also think pacifism is a bit naive, and people compare peace and nonviolence to Superman, but Superman killed Ultraman in that movie. You see someone who's incapable of change. You see people, a nation that's incapable of Did I find an ancient city? It's down there. Oh, it's down there. Oh, it's fucking right there. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. So which one do we support? Unfortunately, I think I'm gonna go with just war theory. Did you see that fucking soul coming out of there? That was cool. No way for me to get down there, though. How am I supposed to get down there? I thought that was water, and I was like, what if I jump? Turn my brightness up, bro. But I think I am going to subscribe to just war theory. everywhere. They're everywhere. Fascism is Fascism is ideally worse than pacifism. Oh wait, pacifism fails to achieve its goals because it relies on the belief that nonviolence can effectively counter it. Okay, what is the response to that? If nonviolence could not counter aggression, then what about those protesting in India then cause one support and then now not really Gandhi? What? Fascism is ideally worse than pacifism. Well, pacifism isn't bad. You're still stating that it's bad, which ain't. Also, this is assuming that pacifists are going to be nonviolence and peace. Let's see if we can. Why I Am a Pacifist by Elijah Everett. Let's listen to this. It's over 5 minutes too.
Is there such a thing as just war? Many people have strong opinions on this topic, and today we'll be discussing the pros and cons of both sides. Let's start with the somewhat extreme position that is absolute pacifism. Absolute pacifism holds that violence is never justified, whatever the circumstances. This is of course a position that is very difficult to defend. Imagine someone's running around with a chainsaw killing people. Would you be opposed to a sniper shooting that person in the head? Most people would consider this an acceptable form of violence. And in extension, imagine a neighbor country is invading you and trying to force some ridiculous laws on you and oppress you and your people. Most people would say that clearly you have a right to defend yourself in that situation. But that would be a defensive war. That's not the same thing as invading another country. But we can go a step further. Imagine your neighbor country is committing a genocide on a certain minority, and you cannot talk them out of it. Surely you are justified in invading that country and freeing the people. People who are in favor of just war often use the Allies killing the Nazis and liberating death camps such as Auschwitz as an example for justifiable violence. I think it is very much impossible for a sane person to defend absolute pacifism. One fundamental problem with war, however, is the hierarchy of the army. You see, in the army, you are expected to follow out orders from high-ranking soldiers without questioning them. And refusal can lead to very harsh punishment, and for most of history, and in some countries today, can get you executed. In other words, critical thinking and skepticism are discouraged, and blind obedience is encouraged. This is a recipe for disaster. The theory is, of course, that the higher-ranking soldier is supposed to know better, and that their orders will serve the greater good. This might well be the case to a certain extent, but there are always some soldiers who aren't qualified for their rank, and who will not listen to advice from lower-ranking soldiers on principle, leading to ludicrous suicide commandos. And some people will abuse their rank for pure terror. What are you going to do when you receive the order to execute innocent civilians under the threat of being executed yourself, should you refuse? I have talked in another video about how you are supposed to shoot the person giving the order, but because that will almost certainly seal your own death sentence, nobody's ever going to do it. The vast majority of soldiers who ever found themselves in this awful moral dilemma ended up killing the civilians. And the legality of such an order doesn't change much either. When you are threatened with death, you won't be particularly concerned about whether or not that order was legal. The hierarchy of the army...
He shot me in the booty because I was brown.
simply cannot be defended on a moral basis. You have to have the possibility of refusing an order if you think that it's a bad idea. Another problem is that massacres on civilians are
Like the guy from the Cuban Missile Crisis.
inevitable in any war that lasts a bit longer. There are always soldiers who get hurt or traumatized, and some of them act based on their feelings rather than common sense. These people will seek revenge, and often their victims are innocent civilians who have nothing to do with the war. This will of course infuriate the enemy, who will then seek revenge on your people. And this will just pile up and get worse and worse. If you argue for a just war, by extension, you must also argue for the enemy being in the wrong, and that people on the other side ought to refuse fighting. The problem here is that the enemy will be told that you are the villain. And in most cases, there's at least some truth to some of their claims. In the end, both sides feed their people a one-sided version of what the war is all about. And your side probably won't be as clearly in the right as it might seem to you. Think about it. Was it just a lucky coincidence that you were born on the right side? Or is there more playing into it? Another major criticism I have for the just war theory is that people always look back at wars they won as if success had been guaranteed from the very beginning. The truth is, if you don't achieve your objective, you are just causing a whole bunch of additional suffering on top of the suffering that would have happened with or without the war, as is shown by the war in Afghanistan. You see, you can claim that the Red Army was justified in violently liberating Auschwitz, to stick to one example. And of course, I would totally agree with you. But the problem is that the liberation of Auschwitz was just one part of a huge war. A war that meant millions of fatalities, war crimes on both sides, a miserable standard of life for everyone except the very elite. If you take all of that into consideration, as well as the uncertainty of success, I can only draw the conclusion that anyone's participation in a war is, almost always, going to make matters worse. But just declaring that war is bad and that we ought to refuse to go isn't good enough either. After all, resignation and just allowing an evil system to flourish is going to be quite bad in its own way. Instead, we must think of peaceful ways to fight oppression. One key element here is information. If a government or an organization spread lies about what they're all about, it is paramount to educate the people on what is really going on. Street outreach is a great way of doing this, but with an oppressive enemy, it might be necessary to work underground. For example, by printing flyers and then secretly handing them out. Another form is protesting. This can take all sorts of different forms. You can flock to the streets holding signs, of course, but you can also refuse to work or do civil disobedience by blocking certain roads or buildings, for example. There's research showing that if at least 3.5% of the population actively participate in peaceful protests, that a government will be forced to make serious concessions or just collapse altogether. 3.5% is nothing, but the truth tends to find its way to the surface in most cases. So if you're genuinely in the right, you will most often end up victorious, even if it takes years. Some of the advantages of peaceful protesting include that it is available for everyone, unlike military service, which is generally reserved for fit young males. Another advantage is that it is much less demanding. People will be much more willing to block a road than to go to war. Of course, peaceful protesting can be dangerous at times. There have been enough cases of governments shooting at peaceful protesters, for example. But if you compare that with warfare, you're much better off. And losing has much less severe consequences if your protest was a peaceful one. In conclusion, I think violence can be justified in some situations, but those situations are much rarer than most people think, and it pretty much never extends to going to war. I think soft pacifism would be a good word to describe my position. Thank you all for watching. Do let me know what you think, and hope to see you soon. Bye.
Oh, whoops. Right.
The first trailer for Daredevil Born Again reveals a major character is returning to Marvel.
Oh yeah, Jessica Jones is coming back. It's gonna be so sick. Anyways, yeah. That's around the stance that I have too. But you look at peaceful protest, and then it's like, peaceful protest, what? Stops, like, peaceful protest. When was the last time peaceful protest worked? When it came to war. You think Jimi Hendrix's, like, Star Spangled Banner had any impact on the Vietnam War? Says me, with no knowledge of the history of that time. It doesn't seem like it did. It just seemed like a, yeah, fuck yeah. But I'm not sure if it actually helped. Again, I have, like, no knowledge of that period of history. Peaceful protest only seems to work. The last time the only big thing I can see a peaceful protest working for that I can think of off the top of my head are the railroad wages protests and strikes from the early 1800s during the Gilded Age. I can't think of another peaceful protest that has worked to that extent. I think it despawned. I don't even know what I can find in an ancient city. But I think at the end of the day, I feel like I'm leaning towards just war. But again, all of that is super ambiguous. And I think his argument for conveniently I just think that maybe you know what, but then, like, you think about pacifism, and then it's like you don't have to go to war. You know what, bro? Fuck it. We're pacifists now. And I'm only saying that because of have you guys heard the Doctor's war speech? I'm gonna play it. This is from the Zygon inversion in series 9 of Doctor Who. You're gonna listen to it, but I'm gonna play it for you to hear. And this is probably one of the best anti-war speeches of all time. For context, this is another very just regular people who are living. They just happen to be aliens, which makes this whole thing timeless. They're aliens that, if you're not familiar with Doctor Who, they're called the Zygons, and they're like a one-off villain from classic Doctor Who, but then they come back in new Doctor Who, the revival from 2005 and onward. This is from 2015, I believe. And this is probably one of the best anti-war speeches out there, if not probably the best. And it's written by Stephen Moffat, the leader of a revolution against the government of the entire world, who they feel, okay, so the Zygons assimilate. Their kind of purpose has changed in the universe, and now they're a shape-shifting race with the goal of assimilating in whatever planet they find, because their home planet has been destroyed. So now Zygons are on Earth assimilating as human beings, and there's a revolution saying that we shouldn't have to assimilate. We should be free to be our own selves. And then there's these two sides to it, right? And they want to start a war. And that's where this speech comes in, right? Where they're about to nuke each other, hands over a red button, kind of with cliche. And then this is where he does to convince her not to, right?
It's no good, Bonnie. You can't win. I don't care.
Hi! Hello! Hello! Oh! Hello! Hi! Hi! Stop this, please.
This is the
Let me
12th
take both of
Doctor,
these
Peter
boxes away.
Capaldi.
We'll forgive. We'll forget. And the ceasefire will stand.
No.
Doctor, which of these buttons do I press? Doctor, which one? Truth or consequences?
Truth or consequences?
The speech makes me tear up.
This is the moment we've all been waiting for. Make your mind up, time. One of those buttons will destroy the Zygons, release the imbecile's gas. The other one detonates the nuclear warhead under the Black Archive. It'll destroy everyone in London. Bonnie, sweetheart, one of those buttons will unmask every Zygon in the world. The other one cancels their ability to change form. It'll make them human beings forever. There are safeguards beyond safeguards. I did this on a very important day for me. And this ceasefire will stand.
This is wrong.
No, it's not.
You are responsible for all of the violence, all of the suffering.
No, I'm not.
Yes.
No.
Yes, you engineered this situation, Doctor. This is your fault.
No, it's not. It's your fault.
I had to do what I've done.
So did I.
We've been treated like cattle.
So what?
We've been left to fend for ourselves.
Says everyone.
It's not fair.
Oh, it's not fair. Oh, I didn't realize that. It was not fair. Well, you know what? My TARDIS doesn't work properly, and I don't have my own personal tailor.
The things don't equate.
These things have happened, Zygilla. They are facts. You just want cruelty to beget cruelty. You're not superior to people who were cruel to you. You're just a whole bunch of new cruel people. A whole bunch of new cruel people being cruel to some other people who'll end up being cruel to you. The only way anyone can live in peace is if they're prepared to forgive. Why don't you break the cycle?
Why should we?
What is it that you actually want?
War.
Right. And when this war is over, when you have a homeland free from humans, what do you think it's going to be like? Do you know? Have you thought about it? Have you given it any consideration? Because you're very close to getting what you want. What's it going to be like? Paint me a picture. Are you going to live in houses? Do you want people to go to work? Will there be holidays? Oh, will there be music? Do you think people will be allowed to play violins? Who's going to make the violins? Well, oh, you don't actually know, do you? Because, like every other tantruming child in history, Bonnie, you don't actually know what you want. So let me ask you a question about this brave new world of yours. When you've killed all the bad guys, and when it's all perfect and just and fair, when you have finally got it exactly the way you want it, what are you going to do with the people like you? The troublemakers. How are you going to protect your glorious revolution from the next one?
We'll win.
Oh, will you? Well, maybe you will win. But nobody wins for long. The wheel just keeps turning. So come on. Break the cycle.
Why are you still talking?
Because I want to get you to see, and I'm almost there.
Do you know what I see, Doctor? A box. A box with everything I need. A 50% chance.
For us too.
And we're off! Fingers on buzzers! Are you feeling lucky? Are you ready to play the game? Who's going to be quickest? Who's going to be luckiest?
This is not a game!
No, it's not a game, sweetheart, and I mean that most sincerely.
Why are you doing this?
Yes, I'd quite like to know that too. You set this up. Why?
Because it's not a game, Kate. This is a scale model of war. Every war ever fought right there in front of you. Because it's always the same. When you fire that first shot, no matter how right you feel, you have no idea who's going to die. You don't know whose children are going to scream and burn. How many hearts will be broken? How many lives shattered? How much blood will spill until everybody does what they were always going to have to do from the very beginning? Sit down and talk! Listen to me, listen. I just want you to think. Do you know what thinking is? It's just a fancy word for changing your mind.
I will not change my mind.
Then you will die stupid. Alternatively, you could step away from that box. You could walk right out of that door and you could stand your revolution down.
No. I'm not stopping this, Doctor. I started it. I will not stop it. You think they'll let me go after what I've done?
You're all the same, you screaming kids. You know that? Look at me. I'm unforgivable. Well, here's the unforeseeable. I forgive you. After all you've done. I forgive you.
You don't understand. You will never understand.
I don't understand. Are you kidding me? Of course I understand. I mean, do you call this a war, this funny little thing? This is not a war. I fought in a bigger war than you will ever know. I did worse things than you could ever imagine. And when I close my eyes, I hear more screams than anyone could ever be able to count. And you know what you do with all that pain? Shall I tell you where you put it? You hold it tight till it burns your hand. And you say this: no one else will ever have to live like this. No one else will ever have to feel this pain. Not on my watch. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I know, thank you. Well,
It's empty, isn't it? Both boxes. There's nothing in them. Just buttons.
of course. And you know how you know that? Because you've started to think like me. It's hell, isn't it? No one should have to think like that. And no one will. Not on our watch. Gotcha.
How can you be so sure?
Because you're of a disadvantage, Sajila. I know that phase.
Well, this is all very well, but we know the boxes are empty now. We can't forget that.
No, well, you said that the last 15 times.
Oh!
You didn't wipe my memory.
No, just cakes. Oh, and your little friends here, of course. When they wake up, they won't remember what you've done. It'll be our secret.
You're going to protect me.
You're one of us now, whether you like it or not.
I don't understand how you could just forgive me.
Because I've been where you have. There was another box. I was going to press another button. I was going to wipe out all of my own kind. Man, woman, and child. I was so sure I was right.
What happened?
Same thing that happened to you. I let Clara Oswald get inside my head. Trust me. She doesn't leave.
That last part is just playing into the whole series arc. Is that not, now that's going to be the video that I use. That is a perfect deconstruction of pacifism. If that's not a perfect deconstruction of fascism, that's literally the best deconstruction of pacifism I've ever seen in my entire life. Now that I've rewatched that video, and I hope that you could hear it too. Point after point after point. This is going to be boring because I just want the space to talk. The war, now we're completely for pacifism. Bringing up all those points, war is pointless. War is completely pointless. And this is coming from a literal former soldier. Or like former, I guess, someone who's experienced it. Someone who's experienced the death, the trauma, the brutality, the inhumanity of war. And at the end of the day, it's just an excuse to hurt people. War is absolutely pointless. And like he said, this is one of my biggest arguments for anything out ever. And I've been seeing this with a lot of the people who, a lot of the MAGA people who voted for Donald Trump, who are starting to recognize that they were wrong. And then everybody on the left is just like, no, you've already done your damage. It's like, nobody fucking likes you. And it's like, in order for anything to change, you need to find it within yourself to forgive. To look at them, look at the change that they've made and accept it and forgive. And he forgives her. And even though she doesn't understand it, at the end of the day, nothing's going to change if we don't forgive people. If we don't forgive people, if we don't let people change, if we don't be more accepting to change. And that's probably the thing he says in the middle is so powerful. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. War is pointless. It's pointless because at the end of the day, after everybody's dead, after you've killed 150 children bombing a country, after you've killed all of these people, at the end of the day, what are you going to have to do? Talk. And people don't even do that. All they want is to kill. It's just an excuse to kill people. And there's no change. There's no change. There's no agreements. There's no conversations. It's just pointless violence. Completely pointless violence. When at the end of the day, all anybody or ever has to do is just talk. And I think that, at least I'm starting to think, and there's holes in this too, but I think that the pros completely outweigh the cons too. It's not 100%. Nothing is going to be 100%. But I think the part of it is on us too, as people, is to recognize that anybody can change, is to accept change. My mom is like that. She has this whole idea that people just can't change. It's just the way that people are. And that's not true. Fucking Nick Fuentes telling people to vote Democrat, and I don't think him fundamentally as a person has changed. But what if he is? Obviously, I highly doubt it, but like, you have to be open to people changing. You can be hesitant. You can be like, I need to see more. But ultimately your mentality has to be open to people changing. And the only way anything is going to change is if you're prepared to forgive and allow people the room to change. All those MAGA people who are now recognizing the mistake, let them change. Let them come to terms. That's what Dean Withers does. And I know he's kind of iffy, but just like Charlie Kirk, who was also insanely, he was like really, really bad. You can argue for the both of them that they allowed conversation. Obviously, I think Charlie Kirk was wrong in everything that he, but yeah, I think you should have conversations. I think you should allow people the room to change. Charlie Kirk did not allow himself the room to change because he was so stubborn, hard-headed, and set on his ideology, and that's what made him very disappointing and infuriating. And I only say that about him because I feel like his beliefs and policies were so obviously inhumane that it's clear he needed a readjustment, and he would never allow it within himself, which is what you also have to do. Not only do you have to be prepared to forgive and let other people change, you also have to be open to being wrong and allowing yourself room to change. That's what matters. The only way anything is going to change in any country, in any government, in any, is just to allow. You just have to let it. You just have to let it change. That's it. That's all you have to do, is let it change. Let people change. Be open to change yourself. And war is pointless. Pointless death. Pointless missiles. And I think as much as people didn't feel any sympathy for Iran bombing Israel, admittedly, myself included, rewatching this speech has kind of turned that opinion around, that at the end of the day, it's all pointless. The civilians shouldn't have to suffer for the sins of their government. And yeah, again, there's a lot of gray area, and my position obviously isn't 100% absolute. Everybody's gonna have differing opinions and different conversations, and that's fine. That's what we encourage, is conversations. I do I do think that killing kids is wrong, though. I think killing people that have nothing to do with conflict, foreign conflict, is wrong. I don't know, I could be wrong. But even then, I feel like when it comes to countries like Israel and the Jews, there's a lot of emphasis on the fact that they haven't changed and that they're also resistant to change. And I think that that's dangerous. Yeah. Think about Israel and Gaza. Needless violence. Imagine how much would be solved if they just sat down and talked. I have no idea if that's happened and they were unable to reach agreements. But if that has happened and they were unable to reach agreements, then it falls down to the same thing. You can't be resistant to, like, you're just resistant to change. You have to be open to forgiving, especially if you've seen trauma, if you've seen war, if you've seen things that in person. I think seeing it on a screen is a little different and kind of desensitizes you a little bit. But Yeah, even the doctor was like, I forgive you after all you've done, after everybody's who's died. As unforeseeable as it, I forgive you. And I feel like we all have to have a similar mentality. However idealistic and naive it seems, but obviously it's not 100% absolute. I think that's just where I fall. Now, after fucking rewatching that. Anyways, that is crazy. That's gonna be my fucking video. Alright. Feels like a long one. What a subject. I died. I fucking got wrecked. You guys saw that shit, bro. I deleted the thing and it still spawned in. I was like, oh! Ooh! 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 Go away. But luckily it brought me here and it gave me... Oh my god. Perfect room to end the video. So let's see what next week's topic is going to be. That's going to be fun. All right.